Welcome back to the Gyrl podcast. I'm Kyra. All right, let's welcome Tess to the show. Welcome, Tess.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyra. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm always excited to talk about money and normalize money. So thank you so much for
Yes.
having me.
Yes, and I'm so glad to have someone like you here to talk about money and to normalize it for us because it can be really scary. Talking about investments and like how to do it, how to get started in it. But I think what we'll start is to have you tell the audience listening and watching who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I am Tess and I am an investing educator. So I teach women how to invest using super simple investing strategies in a judgment and jargon free space. So my goal is to help you really understand investing in a way that is psychologically safe, but also with plain English words because I think
Yes.
one of the biggest problems when it comes to the financial industry is that so much of the jargon feels really complex because they're words that we don't use in our day to day, but it's actually not that hard. If you're listening to a podcast like this, you are somebody that's probably really ambitious and improving your life. You are totally capable of learning the basics. You just need it
Mhm.
in a digestible way. And so that's what I do. So I work with mostly women in their 30s and 40s that are ready to take control of their money and want to do it in a safe environment.
Yes, I love that. Well, so first we're going to start with this question because I think a lot of us think this. I'm going to say myself as well. So it's a relationship that you have to change, right? So how do we know when we're really bad at money? And then how can we start to change that relationship?
So I'm going to go ahead and say that you aren't bad at money. The
Not
way that
anymore.
No, you're not bad at, even if you think you're bad at money or you've made financial mistakes,
Mhm,
you are not bad at money because learning how to manage your cash flow, how money comes in
mhm,
and out of your life, learning how to invest, those are skills. It's sort of like when you say you're bad at money, it's sort of like saying, I'm bad at riding a bike, but I've
mhm,
never been on a bike. No one's ever taught me how to ride a bike. I've never
mhm.
tried. So you're not bad at that. You just haven't taken the time to learn the
Right.
skill. So I
Yes.
hear it all the time when people say, I'm bad at money, I'm bad at math. You also don't need to be a mathematician to be a good
Yeah.
investor. In fact, usually with most simple investing, the less you do, the better. Once you learn the basics, you're kind of ready to go. So the first thing I would say, Kyra, is you're not bad at money. You just
Mhm,
haven't learned yet. And that is like the first step to
mhm,
rewiring our brains around what our money story is.
mhm, mhm. I love that because yes, lots of people say that. Now I definitely am a person that would say, "Oh, I'm bad at math." I'm bad at math. No, I can't because I'm the person where like I'm talking about numbers and I'm trying to do, I can do multiplication all day, like all day. But when you start, doing some other things, and my husband always tells me, he goes, just put the numbers on top of one another. Can't you visualize it? And I'm like, no, I can't. I'm sorry. I just can't. But but I do think it is what you said is really important about understanding that you're not bad at something. You just don't have the tools or the skills yet to do it. And I think
Exactly.
like to your point, it's like once you can come to that conclusion, I made fun of myself, but like maybe like 10 years ago, I was saying like, oh, I've made some bad choices with my money. But then once you get your head wrapped around like, I want to change this relationship, then you can turn that around.
A hundred
Um,
percent. 100%.
so, okay, why do we need to understand the basics of investing, even if we were to outsource it to an advisor or to someone else in our life?
This is something that I talk about a lot on my social media channels. I have a Instagram at Wealth with Tess. That's where I post everything. And the reason why it's so important to understand the basics of investing is because at the end of the day, no one's going to care about your money more than you. And through the relationships I've built on social media and through my investing education programs, I hear the same stories over and over where people have outsourced to a financial advisor that is not necessarily acted in their best interest, or
Mhm,
the financial advisor was okay, but they didn't understand how impactful investing can be. So they weren't taking as much ownership of their own investing, even though they had someone good on their team. And the
Mhm.
last thing I would say is if you have a partner that's better at money, usually there's one partner that can take the lead on finances and be more interested
Mhm.
in the investing. I can't tell you how many times women have come to me in a situation where they are either getting divorced, separated, widowed, when something bad happens. And at that
Mhm.
moment, that's when they're finally taking control of your finances. And it is heartbreaking, right? Because you're going through something
Mhm.
horrible. And the last thing that you should be having to deal with while you're trying to heal or grieve or whatever it is worrying
Mhm.
about your money. And so many people wait until that thing goes wrong. And then they're forced to learn. And that's a horrible position to be in. So
Mhm.
there's no situation where you learning the basics of investing isn't going to improve how much
Mhm.
money you have in retirement. And so to go back to the example of a financial advisor, there are plenty of people that I've worked with, myself included, and I'm happy to share my story where, 10 years ago, I just gave all my money to an advisor and I asked them to make it more and I didn't look at it. And
Mhm.
not understanding the basics, I realized I wasn't invested aggressively enough. I was paying astronomical fees. I actually wasn't investing as much as I could have because I didn't
Mhm.
understand the power of compound interest. So I actually had enough money to be investing more and it wasn't. And a
Mhm.
financial advisor, they can tell you, what to do. But at the end of the day, if you understand how powerful it is, you can, one, make sure you're investing enough in the first place and be motivated to do that. And then
Mhm.
two, make sure that your money is being taken care of and vet a financial advisor, right? If that's the route you want to go, where to be honest, most women can learn the basics for themselves. It doesn't feel like that's possible, but it totally is.
Mhm.
Even if you are hiring someone, how could you possibly know if they're going to act in your best interest if you yourself don't have that basic education?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
could go on and on with different examples, but at the end of the day, the summary of everything I just said is no one's going to care about your money as much as you are. And
Mhm.
so we spend, so many hours, 40 plus hours of working every single week. And
Mhm.
when I'm talking about learning the basics of investing, I'm talking about maybe like 5 to 10 hours of effort of learning. So if you think
Mhm.
about the amount of time you spend trading your time for money, 40 plus hours a week, spending 5 to 10 hours just like one time to learn the basics is totally
Yeah.
worth it. And
Yeah.
so that's another reason why you should learn is it's honestly just not that hard to learn the basics, and just learning a couple things can make a huge difference in your returns over time and how much money you have ultimately in retirement.
Mhm. Yeah, because speaking of retirement, right? We all know when we get to that place of, starting like 401ks and start investing money in different things for retirement. Of course, there are the tools that say this is how much money you're going to need to retire. But how do we really know, Tess, how much money we're going to need for retirement?
Yeah, and this is a perfect segue because this is one of the first things I teach in any kind of beginner investing program I'm doing. So I have one program that's like 4 weeks long. It's super super straightforward, and by the end of 4 weeks, you know enough to set up your own simple investment portfolio. But
Mhm.
what I always say is that investing without a goal is challenging because you're just like putting in a random amount of money every month and you're hoping that it'll add up to some amount that you think is going to be enough for retirement. The
Mhm.
good news is there's actually ways to calculate that and you don't have to be great at math, but this is a little bit of math. So bear with me here. So there is a lot of data around how much money you can withdraw in of your retirement funds without running out of money in retirement. So
Mhm.
let's say you retire at 65 with a certain pot of money. Based on historical data, the general rule of thumb is that you can withdraw 4% of that money every single year for roughly 30 years and not run out of money. So this rule is called the 4% rule. So to figure out how much money you need in retirement, and I actually, Kyra, I have a guide that we can drop in the show notes that actually walks
Oh,
people through this math. It's not hard. All you need is a basic phone calculator. But
all
but the
right.
easiest way to do this is to figure out roughly how much money you want to live off per year. So right now, if you're living like pretty comfortably off your salary, that could be just an easy ballpark number. And none of these numbers are perfect, right? Like trying to pinpoint an exact number for retirement is really, really hard. But to ballpark it is pretty easy.
Mhm.
So based on that 4% rule, the simplest way to do this is to take how much you want to have annually or your annual expected expenses and
Mhm.
multiply that by 25. So I'll give you an example. If you wanted to live off $50,000 a year, and this doesn't include Social Security, this is just off your investments. If you wanted to live off $50,000 a year when you retired, 50,000 times 25 is about 1.25 million. So you could withdraw 50,000 every single year and based on historical data never run out of money. That's a
Mhm.
very conservative example.
Mhm.
And I'm sure a lot of people are panicking, like, I'm not going to have $1 million in retirement. That doesn't mean that you have to have that much money. It's just a ballpark to help you sort of get to where you want to go.
Mhm.
So if you're listening to this and you want to learn how to calculate this, I have a Savvy Investor Starter Pack guide that's free. And inside there, I actually walk you through the steps to calculate this for yourself. And that number might seem super big, like $1 million in retirement might seem so out of reach for so many people. And
Mhm.
it's totally understandable, especially with how expensive things are. And if you're living a
Mhm.
high cost of living area. But what I will say is that compound interest is really powerful. And regularly, I work with women that they hear this number and they go, I'm never going to make anything close to whatever my retirement goal is. But then
Mhm.
when we actually put in their numbers of how much they already have invested, or how much they're able to invest every month, compound interest is so, so powerful that a lot of times women are surprised that they're actually further along than they thought. So I would say if you're just getting started, or even if you're in your late 40s or 50s and you're feeling like I don't have enough time to do anything for retirement, you still have a whole decade or two to benefit
Mhm.
from compound interest. And that's so, so powerful. So that's like the basic rules of 4% rule. And that's how you can figure out roughly how much you want to have before you
Mhm.
retire comfortably.
Yes, Tess dropping the nuggets, y'all. I love that. And yes, let's put that link in the show notes because I do think that's going to be so helpful. But what I really appreciate is just how your approach because it is very calming. Because I too, as someone has thought about like retirement, oh my God, am I going to have enough money? Like, am I going to have enough money? Because like the way I live today, like, what if I'm not making like I too have had those same fears, and I think like so many, like you said, so many women experience that. And I think like just having a simple, just like how you even just explained that was just so like simple, but also at the same time, it was like not here on fire, very calm, and was just like, I can do this. Yeah, I can do
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
totally. And the other thing, thank you, by the way. I appreciate that. That's always my goal is to make it accessible and not scary. And what I will say is sometimes people see that number and they're like, oh my God, I'm never gonna make that number.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, here's the deal. If you learn how to invest and you start investing consistently every single month right now, after you go through one of my programs or you learn the basics of investing for yourself, the worst thing that happens is you have more money than you would have if you did
Yeah,
nothing, right? Right? Like that's like the worst case scenario is that you still have more money. So
exactly. And you can never go wrong there.
yeah, like
That sounds
no
like a win.
yeah, like no one has ever been like, "Man, I really wish I like put off investing." No one's
Yeah.
ever said that to me, right?
No one's
So
ever been like, I wish I didn't have all this extra money.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So, for people who may be out there listening or watching us and they're thinking, women are saying, Tess, how do I know when I'm ready? And how much money do I need to even start?
So there is a really simple way to know that you're ready. And there's a couple things you want to make sure you do before you start investing more to make sure you get your financial foundations in place. So one thing I always suggest is having an emergency fund of 3 months of living expenses. That's money that you don't necessarily want invested because the stock market does fluctuate over time. So if you needed that money and the market happened to be down, you wouldn't want that money invested. So having an emergency fund of 3 months expenses and then paying off high interest debt. And when I say high interest, I mean anything over roughly 8%, 7 or 8%, sorry, 7% rather. you want to pay that off first before you invest. But once you've done that, once you have a little bit of an emergency fund and once you've paid off most of your high interest debt, you can start investing with $10 if that's all you have. You can invest $50 a month if that's all you have to get started.
Mhm.
And when to go back to the debt thing, because I see a lot of women try to pay off debt aggressively that's low interest. So if you have high interest, anything over 7%, you need to pay that off quickly. And the reason for that is because the fees on your credit cards compound, the interest compounds on your credit cards, just like your money in the stock market, right? So we know that historically over time, the rough return of the stock market has been roughly like 7 to 8%. So if you consider the fact that if you started investing, in the market, given historical returns, you could get 7 to 8% return on your money, which sounds great. But if you then have, credit card debt or other
Mhm.
loans that are over 8%, what's happening is you're really like hemorrhaging your gains from investing.
Mhm.
So the opposite is true though. However, once you've paid off your high interest debt, if you have debt that's like 5%, that's money that you don't necessarily need to pay off quickly. And actually, in some ways, if you took the money that you were trying to pay more towards a 5 interest debt and invested it, you could end up with building more wealth faster than if
Mhm.
you'd sort of like paid down that low interest debt, right? So that
Mhm.
magic number is about 7%. So I'd say once you pay off all your debt over 7%, and once you have that emergency fund, then you can invest as little or as much as you want. The goal, of course, is to invest as much as possible early to benefit from compound interest, which, just
Mhm.
to be like super clear, compound interest is when you put your money in, it grows a little bit, and now you have a bigger pool of money that's invested and getting that increased return over time. So, to back up all of this, the second question you asked was, how much money do you need to get started?
Mhm.
And I tell people all the time that it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be anything you can consistently set up as an automated investment every single month is a great place to start. And the last thing I'll say is, when it comes to waiting to invest, the only exception to not paying off high interest at first is if you have something like a match at your
Mhm.
company. So if
Mhm.
you have a 401k and your company will match a certain percentage of it, meaning they will match how much you contribute,
Mhm.
you always want to take that no matter how much debt you have, because that's free money. That's part of your
Mhm.
compensation and you earned that. So I'd say that's one exception to waiting until you've paid off your high interest debt. But yeah, as soon as you've done those two things, you have your emergency fund and you've paid off your high interest debt, you are good to go to start investing.
Awesome. I love that. See, that was explained so simply
I'm
and
so glad.
and so not scary. So
Yes, that is my
and
goal.
and I love that too that you said, you can start with as little as like $10, $30, $50 because I think people always think they have to have a lot of money in order to invest. And yeah, and you've just shown like no, you don't. Like you just have to I think you just have to remove the fear, right? And it's really the understanding and getting the knowledge and the tools. So I know people might be out there listening. They might be saying, okay, Tess, like, I hear you. And maybe you could talk about the programs that you offer. And then you offer your 4-week program, but do you offer like any ongoing opportunities? So if someone's just like, yeah, I want to do it, but I want to keep you close, like to give me tips.
Yes, yes. So I'll walk through because I think this will be helpful. Whether you do one of my programs or not, I want to help you kind of map out the steps. So, like, very high level, I'll explain a little bit of how I help people, and you could follow these steps, on your own if you wanted to as well. So the first thing we do is set up financial goals, and this is my 4-week small group coaching program that has an online video course, and then each week we meet live to talk about it. So to your point, like, I don't send you a live online course and then say good luck. Like, I am around for questions, and that's really important to me. So it's 4 weeks long. There's a module for each week, and then we meet every week. And it's designed for people that are short on time, that really want to learn the basics, but don't necessarily want to be economists. They just want to learn enough
Mhm.
to get started and get moving and start growing their money so they can retire. So the first thing we do is map out some financial goals and figure out your cash flow. Just a rough ballpark number of how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and how much you could start investing every single month. And by doing that, you'll identify some areas where you might be able to pull back on spending or an opportunity to increase your income by going for a promotion at work, whatever it is. So
Mhm.
that's the first step, is the foundations. The second step is where you're going to invest. So now you found this money in by looking at your cash flow, looking at how money comes in and out of your life every month. So maybe you say, okay, I have an extra, in addition to my 401k match, I have an extra $300 I want to start investing every single month. The next thing you do is figure out where to invest it.
Mhm.
And the wonderful thing for us is there are a lot of great retirement accounts that help us save on taxes. So, a good place to start for a lot of people is a Roth IRA. IRA just stands for individual retirement account. And so anyone that is making less than, this year, at the time of this recording is 2024, I think it's about $160,000. If your adjusted gross income is less than that, you can contribute to a Roth IRA $7,000 throughout the year. And what's amazing about an account like that is it helps you save on taxes. So you don't get a tax break now, but your money grows tax free. And then in retirement, you have tax free withdrawals. So that's the second. So that's just one example of where you can put your money. If you're a
Mhm.
business owner, there's other types of accounts. But step one is, where are we going to find the money? Step two is, where are we going to put it? And putting it in retirement accounts like a Roth IRA, or if you're a business owner, a SEP IRA is a great place to do that, because you get to save on taxes and grow your money at the same time. So it's a win win. And
Mhm.
then steps 3 and 4 are learning the basics of the stock market and choosing really, really simple, what's called diversified investments. So funds that hold a bunch of different stocks at once. So you don't have to worry about trying to pick stocks. You
Mhm.
can, instead of buying certain specific stocks, you could just go buy the variety pack. And some of them go up and some of them go down. But investing in that way, in funds that hold a bunch of different stocks at once, make it super easy for the average person to invest without doing any kind of like stock market technical analysis.
Mhm.
So that's a really important piece, because a lot of people, and I see this mistake all the time, will open up something like a Roth IRA and then not necessarily put money in it, but the money's not actually invested, right? So these
Mhm.
accounts, these types of retirement accounts, that's just the container for your investments, and then you need to choose your
Do
investments.
something.
So
Yes.
that's like the 4 steps really. So I do have that in the Savvy Investor Starter Pack, and the guide kind of
Mhm.
walks you through those 4 steps. So you could start to learn a little bit more about that. So definitely download that guide. And in there, I also have a link to a free on demand workshop of 4 investing mistakes I see people make all the time that cost
Mhm.
them money, and how to avoid those mistakes. So that video is in there as well. So that's the high level of how I work with people. And to your question, which is the longest answer to your question ever, of what happens after the 4 weeks, is the way that for the exact reason that you said, once you join, if you do end up joining the Money Confident program, you join a Slack group, and that's where we answer questions. Slack is just like a chat room for people that haven't used it. And once you're in, you're in. So you get access to that channel until forever. I think I will do this business forever, because I love talking about this and I love helping women make more money. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So once you're in, you're in. And then if you have questions later on, you can always reach out to me. I want to make sure that people feel supported, because it can be really scary. And
Mhm.
as you move through your financial journey, you'll have questions. So,
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. And again, also just really appreciate you giving some actual nuggets today. Like you gave a lot of good things. So even if you're someone and you're saying, I don't know just yet, but I'm taking this in, taking notes, because I was over here like sneakily writing down some notes too of what Tess said. Things that I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, let me check that, because I make sure I've got the diversified ones and not just like, not that I didn't just pick, like it's not just a container." So
right,
yeah.
right,
I love
right.
that. Awesome. Okay. Well, let's tell the audience how they can connect to you.
So the best way to connect to me is when you sign up for the free Savvy Investor Guide in the show notes. Uh, I'll be able to share more investing information with you. So I would say that is like the number one way to connect with me, because in there's my information, even my Instagram handle. So definitely downloading the guide, that's absolutely the best place to start and the best place to get sort of a summary of what we talked about today. But if you want to connect with me, I'm on Instagram. I share a lot of investing tips and education on Instagram at Wealth with Tess. So those are probably the best two ways: is either give me a follow on Instagram and DM me. I check all my DMs myself, so I will answer. Really, me, not a bot. And the grabbing the free guide is the best two places.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. All right. So this was fantastic because I feel like it is always scary to talk about money, but we need to talk about money because it's like how we live. And so, it's like the things we need to survive. So I feel like just having someone to just simply, simplify it. I know it's not like, there are some steps, but I feel like you've done just such an excellent job in like your approach and how you talk about it. First of all, I can tell you really love helping people and you love talking about it. So that's like that shines through immediately, but then also just the steps that you're willing and the tips that you're willing to give. And she's right. She is on Instagram and she is giving out tips. So go there. Go there
Thank
and get
you.
those free nuggets, everybody. So
Thank you.
what we're going to do now is we are going to transition to three things with tests. So I'm going to ask you three questions that helps our audience just get to know you a little bit better. So the first question is, how do you start and end the day?
So the way I start the day normally is I try to get outside as soon as possible, like whether it's just like to go for a quick walk or just like get some fresh air. That's how I love to start my day. Currently, I'm recovering. I ruptured my Achilles, so
Oh,
I am
no.
not. So I'm not going outside, and it's really affecting me because
Mhm.
that has been such a good, energizing thing for me, a
Mhm.
calming thing for me. And now, because I can't really walk, I'm on crutches. It's like hard for me to get outside. So it's funny, like you don't realize the value of these small things you do. So
Mhm.
anyway, I'm excited to get back to that. I should be walking next week. So I'm excited to get back to that.
Nice.
So that's the way that I start my day. And the way I end my day is I usually try to read something fun. Life is really serious. There's always a lot of stuff going on. So I honestly, I read or watch something fun.
Mhm.
I don't watch a lot of like sad, depressing stuff. I feel like life's been like hard enough. Like
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to have fun. I want to like laugh or read something lighthearted. So I
Mhm.
really try. I don't have any like magical personal development way I end my day. I just want to end it in like a good mood. And honestly, I'm not taking myself too seriously. So that's kind of how I end
Yes.
my days.
Awesome. Love that. All right. Number two, what's a goal or intention that you've set for yourself this year?
So this year, my big goal is to work with 200 women inside the Money Confident program. So I've already had quite a few go through. So I actually think I'm going to hit this goal, which is cool, which is why you should write
Nice.
down your goals. But I have a longer term goal of helping as many women as possible become millionaires. But investing takes time. That's not an
Mhm.
overnight thing. So over the next 10 or 20 years, I hope that many of the women I've worked with that are investing consistently are starting to reach those number goals. But
Mhm.
for this year, I really just want to educate 200 women on the basics of investing and have them feel really confident and good about what they're doing. Because the one thing that I love that I didn't expect when I started my business is educating on this topic is so empowering because you learn something you didn't think was possible for you to learn. And
Mhm.
so then you're in the workplace or you're in your business and you feel just a little bit more confident, a little bit more empowered, and a little bit more aggressive in terms of like, where else can
Mhm.
you make money and how else you can invest? And then, and this sounds hard to believe, your financial future actually becomes fun or exciting and
Mhm.
not dreading, even if
Not
not something you're dreading.
daunting.
Yeah,
Yes.
even not daunting.
Yeah.
That's the right word. Even
Yeah.
even if you're like starting from zero, and I have people that are starting from zero, they're in their late 40s, they have nothing, but now they have a plan and now they're starting to invest.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's what I
Mhm.
want to do.
Love that. All right. And the last question is, where are you currently finding inspiration?
So I really, really like the podcast Money with Katie. She does a phenomenal job of really being empathetic and understanding about just the different dynamics of the economy. And, I think this is a great way to sort of wrap up this conversation is this beginner investing is simple, but it's not easy. Like it's really hard out there. Like expenses
Mhm.
are through the roof. And I don't ever want to sort of like bypass any of that. Everyone's starting from very, very different places. And you
Mhm.
never know what somebody's been through, what somebody had to pay for, somebody had to take care of their mom, somebody's in debt for whatever reason. So,
Mhm.
I think that what she does a really nice job of is really highlight some of the differences in terms of and some of the genuine challenges rather than this, BS that's kind of like if you work hard, like you can figure it out, which
Mhm. Yeah.
obviously it's important for us to take control of our money, but we are also all starting in different places. So I think she does a
Mhm.
nice job of commenting on some of the more practical stuff around just how challenging it can be out there. And I'll
Mhm.
also say she also did also how to protect your money too. Like she just did a great episode on how much bachelorettes cost and how you can feel really guilty to like spend all this money
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
so just like practical financial conversation. I really like her podcast.
Awesome. I like it. All right. And before I let you go, what are three things you'd like the audience to take away from our conversation today?
The first thing is that nobody cares about your money more than you. So right
Mhm.
now, if you are investing and your money is being managed by somebody else, or you have a 401k and you have no idea what's in it, take some time to figure out a little bit about how your money is invested. Because I will tell you the amount of women that go through heartbreak because they realize like 10 years later that their money wasn't invested in the right way or that they were paying really high fees. So if any of this conversation is interesting to you, take action right now because you'll regret it if you wait. Everybody does.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is that learning to self-manage your own money is not as hard as you think. It sounds for a lot of us like learning to invest on your own sounds like this crazy thing that's so hard and not accessible. But I kind of touched on this a little bit, but what I will say is that the best investors are people that buy simple variety pack type investments and they hold them over a long period of time. They don't trade, they don't time the market. They use simple investing and you can totally learn how to do that. So those are the first two things. And then to just sort of circle back to the beginning of our conversation and I think the favorite question that you asked me was do some the third thing is you're not bad at money. So if you think you're bad at money, like first, you're not. You just have not, you should have gotten an education in school, which I could go on a whole nother rant about that, but we don't have time for that. But like you should have gotten an education, you should have had help. Somebody should have sat you down and taught you this stuff, but they didn't. And it sucks. And I hope in the future it'll change for the next generation. But it's still your responsibility to do what you can to change it now. So I would say you're not bad at money. Find someone, whether it's me or somebody else. And seriously, reach out to me. If you need a podcast or you're a reader and you want to read a book, I have resources for days. Take action, send me a message and say, I heard you on the podcast. I need help. And I will
Mhm.
find a resource for you, even if it's just an account that aligns with who you are, whatever it is. Um, you're not bad at money. You can totally do this and you can totally turn it.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you so much. Those are great.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Tess, for coming and sharing with us. It has definitely been a pleasure chatting with you. I feel smarter financially just from this time I've spent with you today and took some notes of some things that I'm going to go check and just, check into myself. Because I think it's so important, especially as women, to understand our money and where it's invested. What is it doing for us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you had some notes. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. Like you mentioned, I love talking about this stuff. So even if you ever have a question or if anyone listening has a question, like truly reach out to me because I'm happy to help you in any way I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. You can always come back to see us here in the future.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast. I love your mission. I love what you do. So thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you. All right. Stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.